Hey, welcome to Relatable, Relationships Unfiltered. If you're looking for one of the most effective ways to improve connection in the bedroom, this is going to require that you start communicating more openly and honestly about what's going well and the things that you would like to see improve or even just shift a little bit. Joining me today is Brittany Green, a certified intimacy and relationship coach. Brittany's here to give us some tips on better communication for overall better connection. This is Relatable, Relationships Unfiltered. Brittany, welcome to Relatable.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, thank you for being here. And I was just informed by Brittany that it is midnight where she is at right now. So she is committed to really giving you guys this message. So very grateful. Thank you.
Of course. It's Valentine's Day. Sometimes we need a little break in the middle, so it's good.
It's very true. Yeah. What are your thoughts around this day before we jump in?
You know, I don't get so caught up in the commercialization of Valentine's. I think it is beautiful that we've decided to dedicate a day to love. And I try not to let, the money hungry aspect of it completely block in the fact that we give love to our friends, our neighbors, our lovers. There's so much love to give, and to have a day set aside to celebrate that is beautiful. And we really shouldn't, discount that or make it seem like it's not as important as it is. You don't have to spend money to show love, but to dedicate a day to it is very important.
Yeah, I agree. I did an interview around it recently, and I agree. I said the same thing, that it could be a handwritten card. It could be little like Post-it notes stuck all over the place. It doesn't have to cost money. Acts of service, but just someone that they're special. Yes, we want to do it all year, but I agree that there's something about today that it's okay to go out of your way to show them.
It is. And there's so many types of love. It doesn't have to be so concentrated on a relationship, but of course that's what we deal mainly in. But I feel like people totally throw it away sometimes because they don't have a particular partner, but you can always show love.
Exactly. My kid has been my Valentine's. This is he's 16. So with this, we're going on 16 years of it, and it works for me. So Brittany, tell everybody who you are and what you do and what you specialize in.
Okay, so I'm Brittany Green. I am coach and consultant. I went to university for behavior. So I studied behavior and animal behavior and human behavior, and that was my main focus. And I took that into learning and focusing on relationships at the Kinsey Institute at Indiana University.
Oh, wow.
So I became very obsessed one class in, and I was completely taken with it. So the discussions of relationships, dating, sexuality, and intimacy are my main focuses, and what I try to bring into the world with a very main growth focus and being towards the light. I like to not say I'm completely faith-based because I don't want to cut myself off from any particular community, but I'm definitely spiritually focused in how to make sure that we keep our light in regards to dating and relationships and how we move forth in life and how that brings us exactly what we want. So my focus is growth.
I love it. I love it. My practice is called Evolve. So Evolve Counseling. And so same idea. And that was a big part, when I named it, I realized how often I said evolve in my sessions, that we're always evolving, and the purpose is to evolve. And I was like, okay, that must mean something. So I can definitely resonate with you, that growth mindset. Who is your primary client? Like what demographic?
My primary client is typically later age 20s and to 60s, honestly. I work with people who are getting back into the dating after long-term relationships and people who are just starting to realistically look for a life partner. So not exactly casual dating. So I focus on people who are really looking to make a lifetime relationship with a partner and to have a healthy relationship, fun sexual relationship, and not be caught in the typical bubble or box that is set aside for most of society.
Which is so important because our messaging around intimacy and sex and relationships and all of it is so heavily skewed by society. And it is so, somebody has decided for us what we should think about it, what we should feel about it, believe about it. And the impact on our ability to enjoy it and to experience pleasure is so greatly impeded upon with these societal, expectations and views. And so that is so important and ties into what we're going to be talking about today around the idea of communication when it comes to sex and intimacy and deeper relationships. That if we're both walking into it with like these preconceived notions or these misconceptions, and then we're not talking about each other's beliefs around it, and we're not digging into that, we end up with a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of resentment, a lot of rejection. So let's dig into that. The communication piece it's a heavy lift for you. Where do you start with that? So if somebody, is wanting to get to know their partner better intimately, whether they're in a new relationship or they've been together for a while, where do you jump in?
First, I want to talk about where they're at right now and where they started, because sometimes relationships don't exactly start on, let's say, a high chemistry level.
Sure.
And the reality is, before, relationships really had nothing to do with chemistry and love. They were all about, how are you going to help me? How am I going to survive? And so for me, it's very important to know where a relationship is starting and what they're looking for and how to build beyond that. So if you're looking for something healthy and you didn't have, let's say, the strong chemistry before, but you had the strong connection before, I want to talk about how we can build that up, how we can connect with each other, because sometimes it's not even looked at. And they assume it can't happen because it hasn't happened before. But just because it hasn't happened before to you doesn't mean that it can't happen. I mean, it's kind of like orgasms, right? Different types.
Sure.
Because you haven't had that type before doesn't mean it's not possible.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have disconnects in their relationships and they feel like it's just never possible because maybe it wasn't there in the beginning, and they never look for that in their partner. They never saw them in that way. So sometimes it's about connecting and building something from scratch, even
Right.
though they have, let's say, the emotional part, but they don't have the physical part. Other times I have to go and build their emotional part up and they have the physical part, but because the emotional part's not there, they're lacking something. Because as we know, in a physical relationship, especially in longer terms, if you don't have the emotional basis, then you're going to lose the physical basis at the same time.
Completely. And that is almost always where I start, is with the emotional intimacy piece. I talk a lot about 5 types of intimacy: emotional, physical, spiritual, experiential. And I'm losing the last one. Intellectual. Oh my God,
Intellectual?
it's my favorite one I'm missing.
Intellectual. Yeah, I was gonna say, me and you, we should know. It's definitely gonna be intellectual for our type.
Exactly. And so I talk with my clients a lot about that. And what is so often missing is there's not an emotional intimacy, there's not a foundation of it. And so when maybe a couple has been together for a really long time and they're great partners, logistically, they're maybe raising kids together, they're taking care of a home, a yard, they have their jobs. But when they really stop to look at their connection, it's often lacking, which then results in their sexual intimacy lacking. And all the way around, it leads to more conflict. It leads to more irritability. So that is almost always where I start, is to dig in of like, what does their emotional intimacy look like? And I do that by even asking, what do hard conversations look like? And it is wild how often people, they've been together for years and years and they don't have hard conversations, or they don't talk about sex. They don't take, time each week to just bond and like literally like sync up, co-regulate. It's really hard to like be super committed to somebody emotionally, be like really invested in somebody when you're not putting in that investment.
It is. And it's very hard to be sexually turned on by somebody continually if you don't feel that investment.
Right.
And that's for men and women. And it's often discounted as a woman thing, but that's not true. There are a lot of men who, when it comes down to it, and you really start to talk to them and question them, they haven't told them that they were handsome, that they were attracted to them, that they appreciated them. They haven't been, sexually advancing towards them in times where they didn't start it. And it's just so many times both ways where the emotional side is missing, even if one maybe doesn't notice it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
oh, go ahead.
No, but once you get to that, and then they start to understand that, it tends to be like, oh, okay. I like to talk about the male member is directly attached to the emotions, and the female is not. We can actually, it's common that women can do sexual acts without being sexually attracted, but men literally can't if they don't have if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel some type of way, if their emotions are out of whack with you, they can't perform. And women don't exactly have the same notion. And also we have things like lube that can conceal if we're interested or not. And so we can easily cover that up, whereas a male can't. And it's important to really acknowledge that this is important, the emotional aspect of relationships. And the more freedom when it comes to sexuality these days, people are learning the importance of it, because all of this Tinder, Bumble, all of these social media relationships and quick sex is starting to make even men understand that it's actually not so great. It's actually not so fulfilling.
Right. Right. And that, I always say that the emotional intimacy leads to the mind-blowing sexual intimacy. And for a lot of people, they can enjoy it just for the sake of enjoying it. And I think that's great. But there's a different energy that goes on when you are emotionally attached to somebody, when you're emotionally invested, engaged, bonded. And what you said earlier is so true, that the most important aspect of that is that it creates safety. And good sex without safety is just not a thing, because you're feeling insecure, you're feeling guarded, and all of that is attached. In the book Come As You Are, she talks about the accelerator and the brake, and that is so true. So the accelerator being that, okay, we're ready to go, and certain things have to be in place for us to be ready to go. And then the brake is, I'm not feeling comfortable. I'm feeling insecure. I don't like the environment. What's going on the other side of the door? There's like so many elements.
My feet's cold.
Yes. Yeah. There's so many elements there. But really the distinction is that when emotional intimacy exists, you can turn to your partner and say like, yo, I'm feeling really uncomfortable because of X, Y, and Z. And you guys can pivot and you can figure it out from there. When it doesn't exist, you either just try to force it, which leads to a whole slew of other issues, or you're just say things like, I'm not feeling it, I'm not into it, not tonight, things like that, which then leads to the rejection and the resentments. Yes. So this communication piece is so, so important.
Yeah, I can't get over how important communication is and how to interpret communication. And getting to know a partner, actually talking about these things and what are you interested in, and getting to re-know your partner. What do you still like? What are you still interested in? What have you found interesting lately that I don't know about? And that is actually a little more rare when these long-term partners, even people over 3 years, they just stop asking questions. They
Yeah.
just, I know my partner. Well, people change. We are constantly growing. We're constantly changing. And we don't want to get in that static mindset that we just know what somebody wants and needs without continuously checking in and going, hey, have you found anything interesting about yourself that I don't know? Or, what new thing did you hear on a podcast or did you see on a porn?
Right.
What do you want to share with me? Always be
Yeah.
interested, always be communicating is for me the main goal of what I teach my clients. Always be interested, always be communicating, and never stop. That's a lifelong thing.
Yeah. And so backing up though a little bit, because I agree, like never stop communicating. However, what about the couples that never started? So I have a lot of clients who I've worked, like, of all types of sexual orientation, gender, all of that. And I hear it commonly that, well, if I ask, it means I don't know what I'm doing. Or if I bring it up, that's awkward. That's going to make me look stupid. And so those insecurities often lead to people not even bringing it up to begin with. So let's start there. If somebody is not comfortable with talking about sex, which is very common, how do we start this conversation?
Yeah, the ego is a hell of a drug.
Sure is.
Getting control of that is pretty difficult. I think it starts with mindset.
Okay.
So first we want to take ourselves out of this notion from TV, movies, songs, music, whatever, that says, if I ask a question, I am inept. I
That
don't
90s
know
R&B, I'm telling you what, Brittany,
I know
that 90s R&B screwed us all up,
it,
okay?
it did. Oh man, 90s R&B and a lot of hip hop.
And a lot of hip hop.
If you don't
Absolutely.
know and you're not going in,
Yep.
and
All of those
it,
songs, right? I mean, the 1 Minute
yes,
Man, and they talk about size and how long you're lasting, all of
it
it.
is. It is. It's catchy and it's defeating.
Yeah.
And so making sure that we learn how to take ourselves out of this mindset of communicating with our partner and asking them what they like, what they're interested in, and then sharing where we're at is actually a bonding experience. It's actually can be very hot, can be very sexy, and it's not nearly as embarrassing as people make it seem like it is, or they create this notion in their mind that I can't even bring it up because then I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I think for the most part, when we talk to another person that we're interested in on that intimacy level, we think that they have a good idea of what's going on. Even if they were to ask us questions, I feel like it makes people comfortable. It makes you feel like we're on the same level. We can relate better. We're both a little bit nervous. We're both thinking about things.
Yeah.
This is a way to bond closer. It isn't a way to make you look stupid or to make you look like you don't know what you're doing. Because in the end, if you talk, you're gonna know what you're doing. And
You're
so
gonna be doing it right because you were given
you're
a
gonna be doing it right, yeah.
yeah.
So there's no embarrassing. To act like you know what you're doing and then to do it wrong is exponentially more embarrassing to ask some questions. And
Agreed.
we're girls, we have our group chats. We know,
Yeah.
like, I hate to scare people, but I would say it's sexier if a guy talks to us or if a woman talks to us and lets us know what their wants and needs, and then we have an amazing experience. But
Right.
if you're in here talking about how much you know and how great you are, and it
Mhm.
doesn't turn out
Mhm.
that way, I kid you not, it's so much worse than if you had asked some questions.
Right. And there's not as much. So even speaking about for like, well, I guess for newer partners and partners that have been together, but thinking in terms of like a new sexual partner, if they're not asking questions and they're not trying to explore and get to know what you want, and just showing up with all this confidence or whatever you want to call it, ego in the world, and it's not good, we're not doing it again. We're not signing back up for that. But if they were checking in, if they were exploring, if they were really assessing verbally and non-verbally prior, but even throughout the experience, at least we know then they care. Like they were invested in the experience and they cared about pleasuring us. And so even if it wasn't perfect, even if it wasn't like mind-blowing out the gate, we're going to be more open to doing it again because we know, like, okay, they're open to me telling them like, hey, a little to the left, or, like whatever that looks like. So I think that's such an important part of it.
It really is. And I feel like that should be talked about more often because men really are under this whole mindset. And again, we can talk about the patriarchy and how it discounts men and how it's so harmful to them and themselves. But really, the thought of seeming like you just are perfect and knowing what you're doing, but you're getting your skills from porn, which is all for a shot, the angle.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to the bedroom,
for the any type of shot.
I mean, we've all had that conversations with our girlfriends, and it was like, yeah, I remember that shot in the porn, and I don't know why they decided to do this. Or it looked good, but it wasn't feeling good. I didn't feel connected. It may have been a circus, but it wasn't one that I was related to and actually having fun at. And it's important to remember that even if you have these skills that you learn from pornography or these type of mechanisms, you aren't actually always giving pleasure and bonding and building something with somebody.
Yep.
When you speak to somebody, when you tell them that you care, when you ask questions, oh my God, being curious is so hot. Being curious, when you just assume, you're saying you don't care enough to ask me actually what I feel, what I like, and who I am as a person. Because then you're lumping me in with every former lover, everything you've read and things. And it's good to read and study, but if you don't ask the questions to the particular person that you're with, then what are you really learning? Like, it's about the person that you're with.
And why are you really there? Like clearly for your own pleasure, right? Like you're there to get off. You're not there to connect. And
that's what.
And that's not mind-blowing for anyone. That's not even mind-blowing for the person getting off because like it's not the same experience.
No, it's not. In that process and understanding that it's actually not great for you either.
Right.
It's not great, even though it may be a great story, it's not a great reality. It's not a great real experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think these conversations early on, so the other value of them is also to provide the reassurance. And so like you were saying earlier that both people can say, I'm feeling kind of nervous too. And I think that creates safety, but also maybe if somebody is feeling more nervous than the other, it's a good opportunity for reassurance, like to provide the safety around like, it's okay. Like it is what it is. Like I'm here because of you and I want to connect with you. And that can also really influence, how the whole thing goes, how you both show up to that. A tool that I commonly use. So if a couple is like, this is so awkward, I do not want to talk about it. Like intimacy cards are a great way just to ease into it. Yes, they're kind of corny. They're kind of like cliche. Okay, fine. But you're not talking about it at all. So at least, use this as your gateway into it. But I've used that with partners in the past of, the intimacy cards, and it's maybe over dinner or something like that. It's just kind of fun. It's fun to dig in. It's fun. You find out things that you didn't know and that, maybe surprise you. And that is another element that leads to the chemistry, because chemistry is kind of founded in the novelty, in the unknown. So when you're finding out these new things about your partner, that can be pretty sexy too.
I totally agree. I actually love those intimacy cards because they also think of questions that you maybe didn't think of yourself, but you definitely want to know the answer to.
Yes, so it takes the pressure off you asking.
Yeah, you're like, Yeah, I did need to know that. I am interested in this. I'm glad someone thought to ask it. And so they're a great way if you're nervous, because then you don't have to put it on yourself for saying, I want to know this. You can go, the card asked this.
Right. And then both people are answering, which I think is the other element of it, is like, when you think about questions and this exploration, a lot of times it feels like somebody has an agenda, right? And so it makes it common for the other person to go on the defense. They get a little ruffled. They get like, why do you need why are you asking that? Like, what's the purpose of asking that? I had a partner like here recently, and that was when I asked questions out, that was like, where would that come from? Why? And I'm like, first of all, I'm a fucking therapist, so all I do is ask questions. So like, you're gonna have to get used to it. And second of all, if that makes you so defensive every time, you might want to check into that as well. That's so with the decks though, when you use that, it does a little bit take out the defensiveness, because then they don't feel so much like you have an agenda.
Yes, I completely agree with you, because then it's not on you. It's not on you.
Exactly. I'm like, it's not my fault. I just want to know all the things.
Like, see, I didn't write it. Though I have used those cards before and asked a question that wasn't on the card. And I just held the card and I was like, yeah, so that answer.
That's so funny. It's all like specific to your sex life.
Yeah.
You don't have to see the Saturday. Oh my God, that's so funny. Did you get your answer?
I did. And embarrassingly enough, after he answered, he lifted up the card. So I was like, yeah, that was not the question. But now that I'm caught, I am just going to say I wanted to know it. Thank you for answering.
But I think that's such a great point, that we can feel embarrassed and insecure about asking things, about wanting to know this information. And so, yes, so the intimacy cards are a great approach to that. Also just going into it with like putting a disclaimer on it sometimes of like, hey, I want to talk about this and I'm feeling really nervous. So, if you can just be safe, if you can be kind and gentle while we're talking, I would really appreciate it. Also can be so helpful.
I think disclaimers are undervalued in the relationship community.
Yeah.
Agreed. I really do. I think before a conversation about so many things, it's great to start with a, hey, I am not angry. I just want to talk about this and just have a discussion calmly about these things that I'm interested in, because coming in hot is how we get off course.
Yeah. Yes, because immediately everyone's triggered. So you're coming, straight in without even asking, is this a good time to talk? Or are you available to talk? What's your headspace like to talk? And you just launch in. And I definitely have a history of doing this. It's something I've worked on for years now. A couple partners ago, he made me very aware of it. Like, hey, you can't just drop a bomb without any heads up. And I'm like, okay, but I just wanted to know, I just wanted to talk about this. So that's something I've become very aware of, is it a good time to talk? Are you both in a good headspace? Is the environment appropriate for it? And all of that makes a huge difference, especially for these vulnerable topics, because if we really set the table for it, then it doesn't lead to the common triggers that take place when that other person is caught off guard. So they might snap at you, they might get defensive, which then makes your survival behaviors flare up. And now this conversation that was really about hey, how can we have better sex, or how can we have sex more often? Or, it could have been a really good conversation, is turned into conflict.
Yeah. Yes. That happens so often, and I can totally relate to that. we grow so much, don't we? And no matter who we are, no matter our studies, no matter we're still people. We still as relatable.
Yes, exactly.
We still go through these things, and we have to figure this stuff out. I was in a relationship for 14 years, from 19 to 32, and it's I experienced so much growth, but things like this, the time and the tone, I didn't even know what that meant. For me, the time was when it happened in my head, and the tone was whatever came out, and that was the appropriate tone.
Yeah, and for some of us who are maybe a little more sassy in their day-to-day interactions, that's yeah, I definitely have a tone. I'm aware.
Yeah. Oh, I was like, what do you mean, tone? If I'm making you sound like you're stupid, I don't think that's me. Like, I had
Yeah.
to grow. I had to grow and learn.
Isn't that so funny when you reflect back on that and you're like, yeah, I guess that makes sense why that relationship didn't go so well, or it makes sense why we fought so much. It's such a different
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, when I think about it, it's like, especially in the last 5 years of my life, when I moved from America over to Germany and I really had some space to clear and look at that. I'm like, wow, yeah, no, I could have definitely been better.
Yeah.
I could have been better. It totally wasn't all one-sided. There was a lot of things going on in which I had to deal with myself, and I had to realize how to communicate in a way that was fair and considerate to the other person. Because for me, especially somebody who studied sex and intimacy, when I was younger, it was totally normal to be like, "What are you doing? That's terrible!" Like while they're down there, while
That poor guy. He's for sure in therapy at this moment. This is like his third of the week. Okay, Brittany.
It is. It's like she used to pop me on top of my head and be like, "What's happening?"
Oh my God.
I've learned and grown, and I teach my clients. So I can also relate.
Important.
I can relate when they're just like, I was like, I've talked to you about this. What the hell? Or whatever. I can really relate to, yeah, you feel like it's bubbling up and you can't not say it. But that is lack of emotional maturity. Like a huge bit of lack of emotional maturity and control, and also understanding and empathy for the other person.
Yes.
Because
so important.
It really is. And if we were confused and what we were doing, or not even confused, but just not 100% sure, the last thing we would want is somebody to shame us in that moment instead of encouraging us, instead of doing helpful directions later on when they could actually absorb it and see it. And that was something, despite me learning early, I had to experience, fail at, and then succeed at later after I failed. And sometimes that's our path. That was my path, but it doesn't have to be everyone's.
You and me both, sister. Yeah, still right there with you. Yeah, that part ties into the safety and trust element of intimacy. And let's talk about that, because so we talked about communicating like prior or outside of the bedroom, but let's talk about the importance of communication in the bedroom. So while the act is going on. So first of all, apparently people, like, it's very common not to moan, not to like talk dirty to each other. Every time I hear that, my mind is just blown a little more. And I know that it's tied into like this whole piece around the awkwardness. And that's what's commonly said, right? Like, what am I supposed to say to talk dirty? That feels so awkward. Like, and I'm always telling them, Google it. And pretty much whatever you say, like your partner's not going to be like, the fuck? Like, where are you learn that? You know, they're likely going to be into it.
Yes, honestly, it's not even all about what words you actually use, but again, like tone, breathiness.
Yep.
Sounding sexy. You can say, "Where's that chair?" Like,
you're like, yes,
say it right, you know? So it's all about just feeling sexy and keeping the sexiness of the moment. So even if you want to direct, or even if you want to do something, you don't have to pick the perfect verbiage necessarily for it. You just want to feel it and let that emote in your voice and let that emote in your body or whatever. So maybe if you want to give a direction, stroke the head or the shoulders so it's a positive thing and it's not just you dictating. Like, and again, like a little bit of breathiness, a little bit of softness not
Yeah.
being hard, not being very succinct and just do this like this. Like when you
Right.
cut and end so abruptly, immediately that makes someone feel like they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Like this is,
Because
as
it's
somebody who
true.
works with animals, this is how we train animals. It's abrupt. This just means
Yeah.
do this. So if you want softness, lovingness, and comfort and safety for your partner and for you, then you want to make sure you're thinking about how you're breathing that out, how you're still in the moment. Don't get out of the moment. And that can be hard in our heads. Maybe sometimes we have to create it. Like maybe I'm out of the moment, but let me act like I'm in the moment. And hopefully that will get us back to where we were.
Yeah.
Or
Well, because
where
then
we
it will keep them in the moment, right? Because as soon as
Yes.
you can sense that your partner is out of it, you're now like guarded, you're feeling insecure, you're like, okay, what just happened? Why is there a disconnection here? And so I like what you're saying, that even if like something's feeling a little off for you, you can try. When everyone listening, we're not talking about safety, we're not talking about things like that, we're talking about maybe the position is a little bit off, things like that. I can just hear the comments already.
Like, no,
So
you're joking me. That's just not.
yes. So if it is not, if it's just not how you want it, then communicate that with, and what I like is, instead of saying, don't go left, I really like it when you go right. So you're not criticizing, you're not necessarily redirecting, you're praising the things that you do like. And often when that communication is happening and you suggest, let's switch positions, or move your body up a little higher, come closer, things like that, it's often received like with excitement, because they're like, okay, they're getting close to something. And that they often, I shouldn't say all they, but in a connected dynamic, the idea is that we do want to please each other, and so we can be receptive to it. But if we're not saying those things, if we're not willing to suggest new positions or to suggest a little to the left, then we're not going to come out of it with what it could be. And that also leads to the emotional intimacy when you're willing to discuss it in the moment. The other aspect, though, of communication is the whole moaning thing. Okay. So if y'all aren't moaning, get to moaning. Like if you've got to like practice this in the bathroom by yourself, in the car, I don't care where you practice it. I think that is like the highest compliment, right? When somebody is moaning, when you are pleasuring them.
It is. It is. I know this is weird, but it kind of reminds me of eating noodles in like Japan or China, like you're supposed to slurp.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yes. Because it's sending the message of, this is so good.
This is good. This is good. It is a positive sign. It is the same thing as saying good job, patting you on the back, getting a raise, whatever. You're being acknowledged for your work as a positive thing, and that it's going somewhere. The needle is moving. Like this is what we want to do. If somebody's doing a good job and you're silent, and they're doing a bad job and you're silent, how are they supposed to know it? How is it their fault at this point? And so it's important to let your partner know. But of course, getting comfortable with moaning or making a sound, because some people, some cultures are silent based, quiet, very conservative, and you're not supposed to, do any of that. And so breaking beyond that mental boundary is something. So again, we're going back into mindset where we have to be like, it's okay. It's okay to make that noise. It's okay to express our pleasure vocally. And it's scientifically proven that it increases pleasure. When you do more vocalizations, it does increase pleasures. And if you're giving pleasure and you're giving vocalizations, those vibrations can also increase pleasure in your partner. So this isn't just be loud. Like this is real points that help you with your relationship.
Real science, people.
Yeah, we're not just saying.
How do you suggest for people to get more comfortable with that? So people who are listening, and because I get these DMs all the time, I'm sure you do as well, of like, I just don't know how to feel comfortable moaning, making noises. I don't know how to feel comfortable talking dirty or even read, kind of telling them what you like while it's happening. What are some maybe exercises you give for that?
For me, I found that most people have it happen in their mind and they stop themselves.
Mm,
So it's already there.
yep.
So getting used to it is kind of, I hate to say fake it till you make it, because I don't want you to fake anything sexually. But if it comes up and it's there and you stop yourself, I want you to recognize that. And when it comes up again, I want you to maybe make a little vocalization and
Exactly.
then slowly release yourself a little bit more every time. You don't have to go in and start having the neighbors know your name like
Or theirs.
immediately.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't have to be your jump off point, but
Right.
if you want to slowly build up and allowing a little bit of sound to release, a little bit more relaxation in your vocal cords, because most of the time it's already there and people are stopping themselves for doing it. So just go ahead and little by little let this happen and
Let's
pay
leak out just
attention. Yes.
a little bit.
Just a little bit, because I know some people, they're just like, what do you mean? But having silent sex can be, and I don't mean like the fun silent sex where we can't be heard because we're in the elevator or something. I mean like I mean like at home, no one's there and you guys sound like minds putting together a scene.
Right.
Like it's basically a great way to show your partner that you appreciate them and that they are learning and understanding your body, and for you to feel more free. It elicits such freedom that the people who are quiet don't understand until they start trying, because it's a mindset about not being free to release themselves that's usually based on some childhood trauma of not being able to make noise or step on a crack too loud in the house, or you get yelled at. Like it, as we
Right.
know, it
Not
can
having a
go so
voice.
deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so true that that's often what it's tied to. Like, I don't want to be a burden or an inconvenience, or I don't want them to think I'm weird or to judge me, or a lot of it is tied in those insecurities. And I like what you're saying, that start just to build like a little evidence log for yourself of just start small and maybe start quiet. And see what your partner's reaction is to it, because that is likely going to encourage you to allow it to grow. When you see, what their response is to that they like it, they're more aroused, they're more maybe even pursuing you, or it gets more intense at that point. That then gives you evidence to support, like, hey, this is a good idea. And I think the other aspect as well is to practice it while you are even self-pleasuring and things of that nature. So if you're home by yourself, for any gender, and if this is a struggle for you, when you are just by yourself, and like Brittany's saying, when it's comes to your mind, because yes, when we're receiving pleasure, that's in our mind is those thoughts. And allow yourself to have that at least while you're by yourself, and get used to, what does this sound like? What am I hearing? How am I feeling about it? And that can be a great way as well for you then to start to ease it with a partner.
Yeah, the self-love is a great way to start into all of this, whether it's deciding how you want something and how to give it. Like, go ahead and practice. Like,
Right.
go ahead and practice this while you're by yourself. You can't embarrass anybody but yourself. Nobody else knows. So
Yes.
why not?
Agreed. Brittany, this has been such a fun conversation. You are brilliant. You are funny. This has just been great. Thank you so much. Where
Thank
can
you.
people find you? Social media, website, where can you be found?
I am on Brittany Green _coach on Instagram, Brittany Green coach on TikTok, and Brittany Green coach on my website. You can follow me on any of those platforms, and I provide a 1 hour free coaching for a consult if you're just interested in seeing my coaching style and to get to know you. And also, please feel free to follow me and all the free information that I have out there. I am a lot more detailed in my email and in my newsletters that I have for my website, because as we know, Instagram and these things are very controlled. And considering what I do, I cannot talk about the things that I want to help you all in.
Yes.
On Instagram, I'm always getting these notices and getting shadow banned. So
Oh
I'm
gosh,
learning
yeah.
my way around. How do you do this? Like,
Yeah, and I get super paranoid about that as well. I've been a lot more cognizant lately of like, okay, I maybe need to stop pushing the boundaries here. But like you're saying in my newsletter, I will, or here on the podcast, YouTube, I find other platforms that I can give people this information, because I get the Instagram thing, and I get, that there are kids on there, and I understand all of that. And I also understand that people are desperate for connection, and they want to feel safe, and they want intimacy, and they want to feel connected to somebody. And a lot of that for romantic relationships ties into these topics that, yeah, we have to be careful where we discuss it. And so sounds like you and I both, we have other methods for people to find it. And yeah, that's our mission in life, is to help people connect.
Yes, please come find me. I am here to help you grow and connect and spread your love and light all over the world.
I love it. Thank you, Brittany. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope you have a great Valentine's.
Thank you. And I hope you get to go to bed now.
Well,
maybe not. Gotta wind down. Thanks, Brittany. Talk soon.
You're welcome. Bye.
Thanks again, Brittany, for so many great ideas on ways to communicate better for better connection. And thank you all for hanging out on Relatable Relationships Unfiltered. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, sign up for my newsletter, and find me on Instagram at Dr. Elizabeth Fedrick. This is Relatable Relationships Unfiltered.